Katie Benner, it felt like every 15 minutes, the New York Times alerted another pretty important development in the story. Take us through your reporting, and then we'll go through some of the other things that the Times reported on over the weekend.
Sure. So we, like other publications, we've just been trying to keep up with the pace of filings and the information. As you mentioned, a judge decided she was inclined to appoint a special master, and the Justice Department just said that much of that work has really already been done. So it'll be interesting to see how she rules. In the meantime, we've seen more developments about how Trump treated information. And inside of the Justice Department, in the piece that I published today, we see that they are really nowhere near to making a decision. In the department's own filings, they've said that the investigation is ongoing with the possibility of interviewing more witnesses and taking further investigative steps. But also we know that the career prosecutors doing this investigation have not yet come close to fulfilling their duty to evaluate all of the information that they've found and compare it historically to other cases under the same criminal statutes. Once that is complete, and I don't even know if they've begun, but once that's complete, they will make a recommendation to Merrick Garland as to what to do, and then he'll have to decide.
Katie, it feels like some of the national security aftershocks or ripple effects are now, at least in a teeny tiny way, public facing. Talk about, is there what does it look like inside DOJ with a case with such grave national security implications, but also, as you report in your great piece, massive political considerations on the criminal side?
I think that you're seeing conversations happening on at least three fronts. So the first is the investigation itself. What evidence is being found, and what does the evidence ask prosecutors to continue to do? What questions have they not yet answered, and where do their investigators need to go? A separate set of questions is looking at the information and assessing the true national security risk or harm of having that information live at Mar-a-Lago. Keep in mind, if the Justice Department were to bring any charges against Donald Trump, and the jury and the public saw that information and did not feel that a compelling risk to national security had actually occurred, it could be really difficult to win at trial. So it's not just the classification markings on the documents themselves, it's really what was the risk. Because keep in mind, when Hillary Clinton had classified information on her server, it was about drone strike programs that had already been widely reported in the New York Times and in the Washington Post. It was hard to imagine that a jury would have found her guilty of risking national security for having things on her server that had already been reported. And then the third conversation is what does it mean for the Justice Department to prosecute a former president, putting Trump aside? What is that historic question? And what does it do to the credibility of the department? What does it do to presidential power? Should a move like that either be undertaken or declined? If they decline to prosecute Donald Trump for something like obstruction of justice, this will be 2 times under 2 administrations for which he's been investigated for that crime and then absolved.
Harry Litman, it feels like the question, and I'm sure it is being asked in both directions, what is the consequence of not prosecuting someone who is so cavalier with state secrets that human intelligence and the kind of intelligence that even a president is only supposed to look at in a secure location was shoved in boxes and based on this great new Post reporting, carried around in said boxes from hotel room to hotel room?
Yeah. So, there's a lot of sentiment out there that says no one's above the law. You must treat him like anyone else. If you or I had done that, we would all be prosecuted. That's true. But I think it is naive or inadequate. There always was going to be what Katie just identified as the third inquiry. It will be at the end, but there will be questions, as in the Nixon case, what is in the best interests of the country? Now, a lot of people have come around to the view, and this is mine, that given the brazenness, the continuing injury to the body politic, the characteristics sort of megalomania of it, that the only thing worse than prosecuting him would be not prosecuting him. But that is the inquiry, and I think it potentially involves and properly involves the White House. But I know for certainly that the DOJ under Merrick Garland will first keep everything separate from the national security stuff. Second, go through the standard inquiry under principles of federal prosecution, and then and only then grapple with the unprecedented, very difficult question: what's in the best interest of the country here?